Smart people were supposed to win. They study harder. They think deeper. They spot patterns, solve problems, and can see 5 steps ahead. But over and over again, through history, politics, institutions, and even in everyday workplaces, it's not the smartest who rise. It's often the loudest, the most manipulative, the most shameless. How does that keep happening? How is it that intelligence, the very trait we associate with progress and leadership, keeps getting steamrolled by ignorance, arrogance, or worse, willful deception? This isn't new. It's not just a glitch in modern culture. This pattern shows up again and again across civilizations. And one of the first to really dissect this contradiction wasn't a politician or a general. It was a philosopher. Friedrich Nietzsche once warned that intelligence without power is fragile, that being clever in a world of noise, conformity, and emotional manipulation doesn't protect you, it isolates you. But the deeper problem isn't just intelligence being outnumbered. It's that intelligent people often assume the game is fair, that if you're right, you'll eventually be heard. That reason will win. That belief alone is enough to make them lose. Take a look at the Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias where people with low ability overestimate their competence, while highly skilled individuals underestimate theirs. It's not just a chart you see in psychology textbooks. It plays out in politics, business, and culture constantly. The overconfident fool charges ahead. The intelligent person hesitates. The fool is rewarded for confidence. The intelligent person is punished for doubt. It sounds backwards, but in a system built around perception, not truth, appearances matter more than outcomes. And that's where smart people keep misfiring. They operate on substance. Their opponents operate on spectacle. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, was executed for corrupting the youth of Athens. Not because he was wrong, but because he asked the kind of questions that embarrassed powerful people. He exposed the contradictions in their thinking, and they hated him for it. In a society that claimed to value reason, the smartest man in the city was put to death for using it. That's not just a tragic story from ancient Greece, it's a pattern. When power feels threatened by intellect, it doesn't debate it, it erases it. Now fast forward to modern institutions. In politics, you'll often hear that the smartest candidate was too cerebral or didn't connect emotionally. Translation: they made people think instead of feel. And in a media ecosystem driven by emotion, fear, and clickbait, thinking is a disadvantage. This isn't about IQ. It's about the social cost of being right too early, or sounding too complex in a culture that rewards simplicity. Historian Barbara Tuchman once described the march of folly, how governments and leaders often pursue policies that are clearly self-destructive, even when intelligent advisors warn them. The problem isn't that smart people weren't there. The problem is they were ignored, sidelined, or ridiculed. Even inside companies, similar dynamics play out. You've probably seen it. The employee who speaks up about a failing system gets labeled negative. The one who smiles, nods, and says what people want to hear, even when it's nonsense, gets promoted. Why? Because organizational hierarchies often reward alignment over insight. They want predictability, not disruption. Smart people can be disruptive, especially when they point out truths that others want to avoid. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer put it bluntly: all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as self-evident. What he left out is how many people burn out before getting to stage 3. And this is where intelligence becomes a liability. It brings awareness of complexity, of ambiguity, of long-term consequences. But in a system driven by short-term incentives, none of that matters. When the fool makes a bold claim, people listen because it feels certain. When the intelligent person qualifies their statement, admits what they don't know, and gives context, they sound unsure. Not because they lack confidence, but because they understand the stakes. And that's the paradox. The more you understand, the harder it becomes to speak in absolutes. But the audience often wants absolutes. This isn't just psychology, it's strategy. The political philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli observed that success often goes not to the most virtuous, but to those who understand how to manipulate perception. He didn't say this approvingly. He said it as a warning. Because in any system where truth is complex but people want simple answers, the fool has an edge. But it gets worse. Once the fool rises to power, once manipulation becomes the currency of influence, smart people face an impossible choice. Adapt or be excluded. Some adapt. They play the game. They smile, flatter, and keep their thoughts to themselves. They become what Nietzsche called intellectual cowards, aware but complicit. Others withdraw, they isolate, they stop sharing ideas. Not out of apathy, but because they're tired of watching insight get bulldozed by ignorance. And slowly the system hollows out. The loudest voices dominate, the brightest minds disengage, and the fools rewrite the rules. That's not just a theory. It's how empires collapse, and it's still happening now. In 1937, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German theologian, observed a strange phenomenon inside Nazi Germany. It wasn't just evil that allowed totalitarianism to rise. It was stupidity. Not in the sense of low intelligence, but a kind of willful ignorance. A passive compliance that made smart people irrelevant and gave fools the power to shape reality. Bonhoeffer argued that stupidity was more dangerous than malice. Malice can be confronted, reasoned with, or defended against. But stupidity, the refusal to think, question, or see, creates a fertile ground for manipulation. And once that spreads, intelligence becomes not just powerless, but suspect. We like to think we're immune to this, that modern education, media, and democracy protect us from repeating the same mistakes. But look closer. Public discourse is dominated by outrage. Debates are replaced by sound bites. Nuance is seen as weakness. Certainty, no matter how baseless, is celebrated. In this climate, intelligence isn't rewarded, it's penalized. Plato warned about this in The Republic. He described the allegory of the cave, a scenario where prisoners mistake shadows on the wall for reality. When one of them escapes and sees the real world, he returns to free the others. But they mock him. They cling to their illusions, because it's easier than rethinking everything they've known. And when someone threatens that illusion, they don't thank him. They turn on him. That's the danger of intelligence in a world built on comfort. It threatens the illusion, and that makes it dangerous. Look at whistleblowers in modern institutions. Edward Snowden exposed mass surveillance. Reality Winner leaked election interference details. Regardless of your stance, what matters is this. They were punished not for lying, but for telling the truth too soon. Because when truth disrupts power, power hits back. This isn't about glorifying cynicism. It's about recognizing the systemic incentives that penalize intelligence. Not in every context, but in the most crucial ones. Leadership, decision-making, influence. It happens often enough to shape outcomes. And the consequences are not abstract. When public policy is shaped by charisma instead of competence, systems erode. When corporate leaders prioritize likability over expertise, innovation stalls. When education rewards memorization over critical thinking, generations grow up unprepared for reality. The fools don't just rise. They entrench themselves. And smart people? Many start to ask the same question. What's the point? What's the point of speaking up if no one listens? What's the point of being precise, cautious, or thoughtful when boldness, no matter how baseless, wins? This mental exhaustion creates what psychologists call learned helplessness, when repeated failure to make change leads to apathy, even among the capable. And once the smart stop trying, the fools don't just win, they become the default. In his 1951 book, The True Believer, Eric Hoffer wrote that the intellectuals who flock to a mass movement are soon elbowed out by the fanatics. Why? Because mass movements don't want thinkers, they want followers. Movements built on dogma don't tolerate nuance. And intelligence, real intelligence, thrives on nuance. So, what's the way out? Not optimism. Not blind hope that intelligence will win eventually. History doesn't support that idea. The truth is that intelligence alone is not enough. It needs strategy. Not manipulation, but awareness of how systems work and how people respond. Smart people lose when they assume the truth speaks for itself. It doesn't. It never has. The truth needs advocates. It needs storytellers. It needs people willing to play the social game, not just the intellectual one. This is why figures like Carl Jung emphasized integration, the ability to harness both intellect and instinct. He warned that overly rational individuals often deny their darker, more primal nature, but that very denial makes them vulnerable to those who embrace it. You don't beat fools by staying above the fray. You beat them by understanding it. And that doesn't mean becoming manipulative. It means accepting that human behavior is emotional, not just logical. That perception matters. That delivery shapes reception. Because if you have the truth, but you don't know how to frame it, someone else will frame a lie more convincingly. Philosopher Slavoj Žižek once said, "We feel free because we lack the very language to articulate our unfreedom." In a world where fools control the narrative, intelligence needs a new language, one that doesn't just make sense but resonates. And that's the final piece most people miss. Smart people often play defense. They correct, clarify, hedge. But cultural power comes from offense, from defining what's normal, what's desirable, what's true. If intelligent people want to win, they need to stop playing the role of the critic and start shaping the culture. That means entering spaces they've dismissed as shallow, learning how influence works, how attention works, how stories move people. Because at the end of the day, intelligence isn't just the ability to know, it's the ability to adapt, to survive in a system that doesn't always value what you bring. That's not selling out, that's strategy. History doesn't reward the most brilliant ideas. It rewards the ideas that win adoption. And if smart people want to stop losing to fools, they need to realize winning doesn't happen by being right. It happens by being right and being heard. The stakes aren't just individual frustration or missed promotions. The stakes are systems, cultures, even civilizations. Because when fools lead long enough, the collapse isn't sudden. It's slow, quiet, invisible until it's too late. So if you're intelligent, if you see what others don't assume that's enough. The truth needs more than thinkers. It needs tacticians. It needs people who understand how to speak in a language the world can't ignore. Because history doesn't just repeat itself. It repeats itself when the smart stay silent and the fools never shut up.